What is going on? I want to welcome you from Half Court today, being Monday, February 14th, Valentine's Day. I am, of course, your host, Sean Murphy, and today I got to talk about what's on my heart because on this Valentine's Day, as I am sitting here recording, it is after the Super Bowl where my guy, Matt motherfucking Stafford, got the job done against the Cincinnati Bengals, winning 23-20 after Matthew Stafford leads an 80-yard game-winning drive down the field in the fourth quarter, getting the ball to Cooper Kupp when it mattered most, using his eyes, using his legs, using his arm, using his vision to lead the Los Angeles Rams to the Super Bowl, putting them in a position to get the stop against Joe Burrow, where Aaron Donald got the game sealed and delivered for the Los Angeles Rams. Now, first of all, I am not a Detroit Rams guy. That is by no means what this video is. But what this video is, however, is a victory lap, man. Because listen, Matt Stafford, for all these years we've been told Matt Stafford is an elite. Oh, he's Pat Stafford. But guess what, man? It doesn't even matter. Because at the end of the day, when push came to shove, despite the injury to Odell Beckham Jr., despite the 75-yard touchdown that was an absolute no call, the offensive face mask, after everything, with no running game in this game either, which, by the way, Matthew Stafford had to deal with for the majority of his career, so that wasn't anything new to him. When the offensive wizard, Sean McVay, could get nothing going, no creativity in this game, no coaching got the Rams in that position. It was Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp, the two best playmakers on the Rams offense, leading them down the field and putting them in a position to succeed. It was plays like Matthew Stafford giving a no-look pass to Cooper Kupp, which, by the way, people forget. Everyone's going, oh, Patrick Mahomes, look at all these no-look passes he's getting. People forget that Matt Stafford's been doing this shit for 12 years. No one gives him the credit. No one looks at the guy at the age of 23 had a 5,000-yard season. The year that Drew Brees and Tom Brady did it as well. There were only 3 guys in the league that did it that year. And it was Drew Brees, it was Tom Brady, and it was 23-year-old Matt Stafford. The Detroit Lions, as an organization, have wasted the careers of 3 players. Of Barry Sanders, of Calvin Johnson, and of Matt Stafford. And the difference is, with Calvin Johnson and Barry Sanders, they retired early. All we're left with is what ifs. What if Barry Sanders was able to play on a better team? What if he had a quarterback that was competent to throw him the ball, to get him the ball, and to drive down the field? What if Calvin Johnson didn't have to waste a lot of his career with Sean Hill and Dante Culpepper throwing him the ball? What if? But the difference is, Matthew Stafford, we got that question answered. Because it was always, what could Matthew Stafford do when he had the team around him to succeed? What if Matthew Stafford had a good coach? What if Matthew Stafford had a good defense? What if Matthew Stafford had a competent front office? And what if Matthew Stafford had a good ownership group? Well, Matthew Stafford goes to the Los Angeles Rams. In a year after the trade goes through, to the day, Matthew Stafford goes to the Super Bowl. And then, in his first time in the Super Bowl, gets the job done. Matthew Stafford, by the way, now only one of 4 active quarterbacks that have a ring. Matthew Stafford, who, by the way, was being compared to Aaron Rodgers, and everyone talking about how much better Aaron Rodgers was, they have the same amount of rings. They've been to the Super Bowl the same amount of times. And there are 2 things that can no longer be disputed. Number 1, Matthew Stafford's elite. He is in elite company. Again, there are only 4 guys active in the NFL starting at quarterback who have won a Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, and Matt Stafford. And Matt Stafford, by the way, the guy that everybody was worried was going to screw this up for the Rams because of all of his interceptions during the regular season, not looking at his 41 touchdown passes. By the way, Matt Stafford had 2 interceptions in this game. One of them was his fault, but it was essentially a punt. There was some miscommunication between him and the wide receiver after Odell Beckham Jr. went out. He threw it to the end zone, taking a shot. His wide receiver didn't even know the ball was coming to him, it looked like. Matt Stafford looked super frustrated. Luckily, it turned out to essentially be a punt. The second interception that Matt Stafford threw was in the hands of his receiver, bounced into the arms of a Bengals defender. And the second thing that can't be disputed, I'm a Lions fan. I know a lot of people that tune into this channel are Lions fans, Detroit sports fans. The narrative that Matt Stafford was the problem in Detroit can be put to bed. Because the simple truth of the fact is that it all comes down to ownership, to the front office, to the coaching seat, because Matt Stafford was never given the tools in Detroit to succeed. In 2014, Matt Stafford could have had Aaron Donald on his team. He could have been a defensive tackle for us. Instead, they choose Eric Ebron, who in his time in Detroit was one of the worst tight ends in football. The Lions had a top 3 pick a couple years ago. They drive Darius Slay out of the building because all reports suggest that Matt Patricia and Darius Slay did not get along, and that Darius Slay couldn't play for Matt Patricia anymore. Matt Patricia pointing fingers at him, claiming that Darius Slay is a problem. He goes to Philadelphia. And then we need to draft a cornerback. We draft Jeff Okudah. And let's be real, everybody. Jeff Okudah has not shown to be worth that pick yet. Now, obviously, he was injured this year. Wasn't really given a legitimate shot. But we can go down a list of all the guys that we have drafted over the course of 20, 30, 40 years. It has not been good enough. Jim Schwartz was not a Super Bowl winning coach. Jim Caldwell, who, as good as he was, is definitely not a Super Bowl winning coach. And Matt Patricia, sure as hell, is not a Super Bowl winning coach. Bob Quinn, not good enough in the front office. We can go down every single list of everybody who's in the Detroit Lions front office. It hasn't been good enough. Now, as a Lions fan, I can also acknowledge that a lot of good things are happening in Detroit right now. We have Brad Holmes. We have Dan Campbell. We have good decision makers. We have a top 2 pick this year. We have another first-round pick this year as well. We have 2 first-round picks. So far, these guys have given us a lot of hope and a lot of reason to be hopeful. Sheila Ford Hemp, our new owner, she's stepped up. She's acknowledged that we haven't been good enough. That's all fine and great. But guess what? Matt Stafford was in the building for 12 years. Matt Stafford, who everyone said wasn't good enough. When push came to shove, when he played a team that was above 500, he couldn't beat them. You want to know why Matthew Stafford couldn't beat teams above 500 when he was in Detroit? Look at the roster around him. Oh, let's take some examples, shall we? Let's look at who he was throwing the ball to in his time in Detroit, especially over the last couple of years, shall we? Let's look at TJ Hawkinson, a guy who statistically has been pretty similar to Eric Ebron in his time in Detroit. I think TJ Hawkinson could be a great tight end someday. Hasn't been so in Detroit so far. Kenny Golladay, a guy that was supposed to be a great wide receiver for Detroit going forward. How many touchdowns did he have for the Giants this year? Oh yeah, that's right. 0. Marvin Jones Jr. went down to Jacksonville. How did he do? I couldn't even tell you. And quite frankly, I don't give a damn. Because I know it's not just from the wide receiver core. How many years did Matt Stafford not even have a 100-yard rusher? We'd hear about it every single Sunday. About the Lions having the longest stretch without a 100-yard rusher. That's why in this game, when Matthew Stafford did not have a running game, he was not fazed. Because he played the majority of his career without a running game. When Reggie Bush was your last 100-yard rusher, until Kerryon Johnson did it. What do you want me to say? What excuses are there left? What narrative do you want to push other than the fact that Matthew Stafford was failed in his time in Detroit? There isn't an argument anymore. There isn't. Now, as a Lions fan, this is a good time to have some closure. This is a good time for us to move on and focus on the things coming up, on our draft this year, on the front office and the coaching that we do have, and on the ownership that we do have as well. But also, every single franchise in Detroit should take a lesson from this situation, because the Detroit Pistons, they just drafted Cade Cunningham, a guy who, on paper, is certainly the most talented prospect we've gotten in Detroit since Matt Stafford. The Detroit Pistons either look at the Detroit Lions and realize that they need to get it right from the top down. And so far, it looks like they have, especially with Tom Gores in ownership, Troy Weaver in the front office, Dwayne Casey, who, say what you will about his coaching, can build cultures and build programs. He did it in Toronto. He's doing it in Detroit right now. When they make moves like trading for a guy like Marvin Bagley III, I can trust what they're doing because they have pedigree, because they have history, because they have a track record, and because they give us something to believe in. And the Detroit Lions, going forward, they need to build a program that is unique to themselves. They need to not look at what other teams are doing throughout the league going, oh, look at the Cincinnati Bengals. They just made it to the Super Bowl after 2 years with Joe Burrow. Could we repeat that in Detroit? No, of course we can't. First of all, because there's few guys coming into the league quite like Joe Burrow, because he has the vibe of a Joe Namath, of a Joe Montana, of a John Elway. That's the kind of pedigree, and that's the kind of guy that Joe Burrow looks like. That guy ain't in this draft. That guy might not be in the draft for 20 years to come. But what Detroit can do is they can do it their own way. And it's no more shortcuts. It's getting your draft picks right. It's having a vision from the top down of how you want to win football games. And so far in Detroit, it looks like we have it. It looks like their focus is on building in the line, whether it's on the offensive line with guys like Penei Sewell, who was brought in to set the tone, who, by the way, had an all-pro year. It's guys like Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell talking about coming in and biting kneecaps. That's identity. That's culture. And throughout the season, we saw improvement. We saw promise. Even Jared Goff, who, say what you will about Jared Goff, who's getting a lot of hate and flack right now, he came in and he showed signs of life towards the end of the year in Detroit and showed us enough to at least say that for one more year, we can at least trust Jared Goff behind the helm. But Matthew Stafford was in the building. That guy wore Honolulu blue. In 11, 12 years as a Detroit Lions quarterback, he couldn't even get a playoff win. And 1 year on a legitimate team, on a great franchise, with a good owner, on a team that invests in their culture, a team that invests in their roster, a team that is willing to sacrifice draft picks, a team that's willing to spend money and go out and make their team better, a team that got the head coaching job right, a team that the front office has an identity. He got it done in his first year. 4 playoff wins, 3 of them game-winning drives down the stretch. Matthew Stafford threw for over 60%. He threw for numerous yards, a lot of touchdowns, way more than he had interceptions. And guess what? Matt Stafford is a Super Bowl champion. If the Detroit Lions want to be remotely in that conversation, they got to start maximizing the talent they have in the room and getting the right guys in. Because you can get a quarterback right, but if you don't have anything else, it's proven. You can only go so far. And if Detroit Lions want to get there, starting now, you got to start getting those pieces right. But with that, I want to know your thoughts on Matthew Stafford in the Super Bowl down in the comment section down below. Here from Half Court, we don't talk football all the time. This is a basketball channel. It is rooted in basketball. However, I couldn't help but say something because my guy, Matthew Stafford, is a Super Bowl champion, and he did it despite being a Detroit Lion for the majority of his career. I want to thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will catch you next time from Half Court. Be sure to subscribe.